Let's first go to, are there any community comments? And thank you for those in the audience for coming at the later hour. Appreciate it. Was it good? Was it helpful to come later?
Sure.
You're here before. You're good. All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Can we go to the reports? We'll start with the Dover High School student and headmaster reports.
Ronnie, why don't you start?
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Ronnie, once again.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I hope everybody's new year is off to a good, hopefully smooth start. In terms of student council business, our toy drive was a success. We held it before the holiday break. We collected toys and gifts for the Home for Little Wanderers, and we got those all delivered by the deadline, so that is an annual thing that we do, and that went smoothly this year. Before winter break, the student council representatives held their town meetings, which is a very scary thing, especially for the first year high school students. You have to get up on stage and hold the microphone and ask the student body what we can do to improve, and they give responses. And then later, as a council, we go back and we filter through the responses, pick the ones that are more reasonable, things that we know that can be done or that can be at least discussed. And then we break up. We talk about different ideas with administration and with the IT department, as well as cafeteria, staff, and different departments that kind of relate to those different ideas. And we see if we can get anything changed, or we can at least talk about something that students have brought up. We're also starting to plan our annual blood drive. We do this in conjunction with the Red Cross. We typically do it March, possibly early April. This year we're going to do it in March. We start collecting signups in February. So we typically have around 50 to 60 students sign up for the blood drive, which is really great. We get a lot of donations and everything runs really well. The student council members kind of take shifts, and we volunteer and we help out. So that's a really great cause that we all love participating in. I'm definitely not a blood donator because have a lot of fears in that area, but I still love helping out with the drive every year, and it's really great to see all the students come together to support that. So as semester one is coming to a close, everybody's preparing for exams. It's a little bit nervous at the high school, a lot of stress going around, but it's still good. I think all the teachers and everyone's doing a really good job of lowering that stress level. Everyone's prepared really well. Myself, I'm preparing to head off to the Model United Nations Conference at Harvard, which is at the end of exam week. So we're going to represent Luxembourg this year, which is really exciting. We're kind of moving up on the country food chain, which is really exciting for us. It lined up for me personally that my exams end on Thursday and then we go on Friday, which is really nice, so I don't have to make up any exams when I get back. But I'm just really excited to take part in that conference. We always have a really good time, and we always learn a ton. So that's what's going on with myself and the student council, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'm curious, Ronnie and John, about the feedback from the kids at those town meetings, which I think is a great practice. It's really important to hear what the kids have to say. Can you maybe tell me about some examples of things that the kids suggested that actually have gone into effect?
Yeah, I can certainly talk about some past ones but as a practice, I don't attend, and I don't attend on purpose, so
Right.
the students have the opportunity to speak without any concerns or anything of the sort. And our advisors sit in the back, and it literally is truly student run, which is great. So in some cases, we have talked about. We have pushed forward things such as seniors extending their senior privilege from 1 semester to 2 semesters. We have talked about having different access for students for technology in our library. We have also talked about some cafeteria options. A small one, but it's made a big difference for a lot of kids, is the availability of a hot water machine out there for tea or hot chocolate or oatmeal. So a lot of them are just the day-to-day things that kids point out that would be really helpful in their schedules. We have also talked about the idea of additional parking spots really came out of their need to look at a better system. So they're usually really good. What we do is I will meet with members of the student council in a classroom after school, usually.
Springtime.
Yeah, once they have compiled each of the classes' requests. And the student council is really good about consolidating that to look at common themes and what might be of interest and things that they know that perhaps aren't within our purview or our control, we can talk about. And then I meet with them, we have that discussion, and then I follow up with a written statement to them that outlines things that we can do and what our plans are for it. So
yeah, and then we release that statement to the class and the student body, and they sometimes give us feedback, or they just take what the administration has said and they kind of absorb that. And it happens 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. The 12th graders don't get a town meeting purely because the changes that they wanted to make, they would see happen in the school, but we still take feedback all the time from students. Like Mr. Smith said, it's usually little things, especially like the hot water and things like that, that you don't really think about in terms of planning, but students really like having on a day-to-day basis.
That's great. That's excellent. And good luck representing Luxembourg.
Thank you.
That's exciting. Model UN is a fantastic program.
It's really fun.
That's great.
Okay.
thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go prepare for mid-years.
Good luck.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So thank you for allowing me to present. I just have a couple updates. I wanted to make the Regional School Committee aware of updating on the interim athletic director. As you noticed in Dr. Keogh's report, as well as mine, we had approximately 60 applicants. We interviewed 9 people. We actually asked for 9, 8 ended up interviewing, 1 person did step away. The committee met over 2 days, asked a series of questions, and we then on Monday morning, I gave information to Dr. Keogh. We have forwarded 2 applicants forward for his consideration for the appointment of the interim. We had a wide range of candidates. We had some sitting athletic directors. We had some sitting assistant athletic directors. We had some people who had some coaching, YMCA connections. And with School Spring, we also had some people who really had no affiliation. And, but that's maybe one of the drawbacks, to it. But it's nice in that we can create reports that are pretty easy to follow. It's much better than all the papers coming in and different resumes and all of that. So it's really pretty succinct, and we're hoping to be able to name somebody early next week.
I actually have meetings set up tomorrow with these 2 candidates, so we're moving right along.
Yep.
Thank you, John, for that process too.
Yep.
It's time consuming, but an important.
Yeah, absolutely, an important position. The second piece I want to talk about is NEASC, known as NEASC. Just yesterday, I had a conference call with Fran Kennedy, who was the collaborative conference chair that we met with, in addition to 2 other folks from respective schools. I think it was Silver Lake and Hudson. And he has finalized our report. And when they met with us after the 2 days, they basically outlined some things to validate some things we said. Here are some things we're going to ask you to look at. No surprises. 2 areas that they want us to address between now and the time of our visit, which will be the fall of 2020, will be our creating a safe learning environment. So some infrastructure pieces around school safety and mechanisms to allow students to travel safely between buildings. And the other is a consistent written curriculum across all courses, including all electives. The good news is we're working on both. We have some plans in place on the safety infrastructure, and we also have been working with a curriculum review committee, and we feel confident that we will have all of those in place. Some departments already have it completed. So we're certainly not starting from scratch. And in some places, we need to have them updated and consolidated in a format that is accessible, not only for our educators, but the community as a whole. And I will be sharing that report with Dr. Keogh and Ms. McCoy early next week, and then subsequently for the next regional school committee meeting, that report can be presented to you. Unlike past NEASC reports, this collaborative conference report is not one that we have to post in the town halls, put into libraries. We certainly will put it in key places, but it's unlike the past reports where you had to literally put it in all these places. When our visit in 2020 happens, it's that report that has to be fully vetted and available. But most schools are looking at the collaborative report and making it public too. So just a little discrepancy, because as some of you know, it's a very different process now. So there's the shortened process where we work collaboratively on what we see as some of our current issues. You know, they'll agree with this, but they'll say, but we also want you to look at this, and that forms that report. And then we have until our visit to make progress on each of those standards, and then subsequently they have a little bit of a longer visit with a bigger team, not as big as it used to be, but a bigger team, where they will be looking at more of our documents and looking for those updates in terms of curriculum.
So, John, there are other things within for the 2020 process that you're kind of still working on besides the security.
Oh, absolutely.
And the curriculum.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of standards, and you know, I was very pleased. The faculty was very honest, and you know, we established what were called priority growth areas. You know, one was a growth mindset for everybody, for our educators, for our students, for our community. So yes, we'll be looking at each of those standards, because even though we feel as though right now we might be meeting the standard, you still need to be showing a continuation of progress so that you can maintain that status. In terms of what does this mean for accreditation, this collaborative conference report will affirm our continued accreditation.
Never in doubt.
No, we weren't in doubt of that, just because this is a whole new process, and we are actually part of the trial run. We're sort of the guinea pigs for it, which is fine. And the feedback from faculty was quite positive, because we did spend some time on it, but it's not as though we put everything aside just to work on this. We were actually able to do a lot of this work collaboratively. And I do want to point out great work by Gretchen Donahue and Keith Kaplan. They served as co-steering committee chairs. They were also on the previous one, very arduous, and they still came back for more. So it shows the dedication that they have for the school and for our students. And the only other thing is I was asked perhaps to discuss, just give a quick overview about SBIRT. And SBIRT is a substance abuse prevention screening tool. Back in 2016, the legislature and the governor signed a law into effect looking at programs in which we could do some pre-screening of potential substance abuse in students. And we currently are engaged in the screening process. I actually have some frequently asked questions. I don't know if that's what...
That's a copy of the letter that you guys sent.
Okay,
out.
great, because I have that too. But let me give you this, which might be a really helpful document. It's frequently asked questions that the state puts out about that. It is a 4-question confidential screening questionnaire that is offered by our nurse or guidance counselors. It is all confidential. It never goes into a student's file. We don't report anything unless we feel as though there's an immediate danger and/or the student reports that they need assistance. If that student reports that they need assistance, we also don't penalize them, violation of chemical health, anything of that sort. It's really intended on, number one, making connections with kids. Number two, ensuring that we don't have some kids that perhaps are starting to engage in some of these behaviors. It's being administered in the 8th and the 10th grade You can see by our letter, we'll be conducting it in late February through March 5th. Students may opt out, families may opt out, and that's spelled out here in that letter.
So when a student, I assume, is in the nurse's office or the guidance office,
Yep.
Are they asked, do you want to opt out, or
Yep.
did they get an email beforehand?
The parents receive this and then are asked to confirm. When they are in that meeting, they also are given that opportunity. You can opt out of this. And even after 1, 2, 3 questions are asked, they may then
They can
opt out
just say-
at any time. They may say, I'm not really comfortable answering these questions.
And, thanks, John. And so I recall that the state said we, as school districts, and I think, Anne, we had a policy, it was to do with screening on substance abuse. And is that where this came from, and we chose this particular method?
Correct.
Is that, okay.
That's correct.
Because I had a couple of parents who asked me. And
Yeah.
I said, I remembered we adopted a policy. But
That was,
I-
what, 4 years ago? maybe?
2016.
2016.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so this is the method that we've
That is correct. This is the
adopted to
tool that we
apply
adopted
policy.
to,
Thank you.
yep,
And yeah, thank you. This is very helpful,
great.
so I appreciate that.
Yep.
I also asked John to include in his report the language about the virtual high school, which he's done.
Yes, thank you. I have a quick, sort of more of a comment than a question. In the bridge update, just because I think the messaging is so important, it says that, and I don't know if this was written by you or by the bridge folks, but it says either medical or mental health issues. The 14 students are there with either medical or mental health, and I would posit that it should be physical or mental health based diagnoses, just because mental health is medical.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let
I just
them
think
know.
that's a really important message. Thank you. And my only other question was just to quickly clarify, you talked about the signs of suicide prevention that's happening tomorrow night, I believe.
Yes,
Thanks.
tomorrow night.
Do the students have that presentation before the parents, or the parents first and then the students second? I'm sorry, I just wasn't clear.
Parents.
First, and then the students will follow up.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And that's
Thank you.
run through our guidance department, our mental health professionals. Yep.
Okay, great.
And we actually have a keynote speaker from the Department of Public Health coming.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. All right. The assistant superintendent reports. Ms. McCoy.
Thank you. So I'll be brief. Speaking of curriculum maps, the mathematics department continues to update their standardized curriculum maps, which follow after the English and the science folks just did the same. And the more public part of the curriculum review process is going to be actually starting tomorrow. We'll be sending out surveys to parents and students and educators to get feedback on our progress within the curriculum according to our standards of best practice. So just as you did last year with English, you'll have an opportunity to provide feedback about our math program. So please stay tuned for that. I touched on a lot of... one other comment that I didn't make about the Academic Innovation Committee is just an update for you as the school committee. As you know, 5 of us were lucky enough to obtain a grant from DSEF to travel to Finland as part of the research process in looking at best practices around the world. We had originally planned to travel in March, but due to an increase in cost because of the size of our group not being as large as we wanted, we had to come to Plan B, which actually things happen for a reason. So Plan B is that we're actually going to travel in July, and we get to go not only to Finland but to Estonia as well, which is quickly coming up the ranks in the PISA scores. And we get to travel with 55 other educators from around the country, which we wouldn't have ever had that number of colleagues going with us in March. So, and it's also a nice time of the year. We won't be freezing in Finland, and we won't be leaving our teachers and students behind because it'll be summer vacation. So again, I think it's a blessing in disguise. And supervision and evaluation, as you know, we have a pilot QPO model going this year. We also want to start looking at the rubric and moving forward, what is in the best interest of supporting teaching and learning in the district, and is it to continue using the rubric that we're using, tweak it, or adopt the state rubric? So we need to bring people together to have that discussion.
Well, you have MOU written down there about them. We do not have an MOU at this time. So if we need to have an offline discussion about how to go through that process.
Okay.
I think there is interest on the part of the union, but right.
Right, yeah.
So, no MOU at this time,
Okay.
but we need to
The
figure
discussion needs to happen
how
however
there-
is most
out
appropriate.
how there would be one.
Sure. And that's it. Any
Okay.
questions?
Okay, great. Can we put you on hold and have go?
I mean, I think most of my stuff is self-explanatory. So
Oh, okay.
if there are questions from my report, I'll answer them, but otherwise, let's move on.
Great.
That works
All
for
right,
folks?
great, thank you.
Sure.
That was the fastest one you went.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh,
That's the
So
best.
I'm pleased to introduce tonight, and not for the first time, he's been here many years, Mr. Bob Brown, who is the principal of R.E. Brown and Company and the auditors in charge of our annual audit, financial audit. So you were presented with bound copies. You had the PDF available to you online, but now you have bedside reading to go with all the stuff that Beth has added to your list. And I'll turn over to Mr. Brown to sort of just do a walkthrough as to the audit and some of the financial, not operational, but financial changes, accounting changes that have been on our horizon that hit us this year.
Good evening. The audit went very well. The staff do a very good job. There's no management letter. Everyone's always pleased to hear that. As I've been mentioning for several years now, there was a upcoming change in accounting standards that was going to impact the financial statements significantly. For the past 6 or 7 years, you've been gradually recording the post-employment benefits liability on your books for mainly health insurance. And I've been warning that in 2018, there's a change in the standard. It's no longer being phased in. It's being plopped right on your books 100%. So the net position of the district, we had to make a prior period adjustment for post-employment benefits of $13,600,000 or so, more than doubling the liability that had been recorded previously. So if you look at the statement of net position on page 9, it drove the net position of the district into a negative because of the size of that liability. You know, if you didn't have, 20 years ago, you didn't have a pension liability on your books or an OPEB liability on your books. Those two totals were about $33 million net, a change in how things are looked at. Obviously, this information has always been known, so if you're, whatever bond rating you have shouldn't change because this liability was already known to the finance people, and it's just now on your statement, so it's a little more stark. One of the reasons it was changed is because it is correct to record the liability, and maybe an encouragement to start funding the liability. I don't know if anyone wants to discuss further on the post-employment benefits issue before I mention other things.
No, we have a subcommittee on that, and I think everyone knows we adopted
Right,
Yeah.
right.
the policy.
Mention it to Bob.
The other things I just noted when just reviewing the statements, during the year, the district paid down $905,000 of its long-term debt, so the debt is down to $5,700,000 about, and that's all going to be paid off by fiscal year 25. So you're in a really good position on, the debt side. And I usually mention on page 16 is the budget statement, which the district lives by essentially. There was a net plus for the year of $57,000, so didn't go in deficit, which is always a good thing, and we came out a plus. Obviously, school districts and towns are all driven by their budget, and it's always very tight. That's about the highlights I had to mention on the financial side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Does anybody have any questions? Comments?
Okay.
Thank you.
Complete. It's complete with no management letter. It's the OPEB we expect,
Right.
which is great.
Yeah.
Right, and I think
Good
it allows
position.
you to see sort of the whole picture of the region when you see these financial statements. So that's just another good piece to flip through and get familiar. It shows you all the different operating funds together in one financial statement, which we do in pieces, but not as complete as the financial statements. Yes, exactly.
There's another potential report. We traditionally haven't met the limit for it. If you had over $750,000 in federal spending from federal grants, you would have to have we refer to it as a single audit, but it's a compliance audit for the grants you have. But we're below that limit, so that piece did not have to be done.
Excellent.
Bob's firm is working on right now, currently though, an audit of our middle school activities fund, and we'll probably be doing the high school activities fund in the fall. So that's a requirement that we get on a cycle of doing those. So they're in the middle of doing that right now.
Will they be annual, Dawn?
No, you have to do an external audit every 3 years.
Okay.
And an internal review the other 2 years.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for,
Thanks
right,
for
the
waiting.
rescheduling.
Rescheduling.
Yes.
Yes,
no
I
problem.
appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Just jumping into the monthly report, continuing just to update you on our operating variances, revenues are still the same as I've been reporting. We're still looking at a little over 90,000 in additional revenues from Chapter 70 and 71. On the staff and appropriations, we now are anticipating a small positive variance in salaries at this point, due to the fact that we are finalizing some staffing changes. One was the business office. If you remember, I think I've shared definitely with the two towns that with one of the retirements in central office, we have now consolidated all accounts payable processing with one individual. So we had two individuals in the past. One was for the region had dual responsibilities. We've now made that person full-time accounts payable processing, which is running really well. And it's actually nice to have one person who sees all three and is servicing all three districts. So that has worked out really well, but it's actually been more savings for the region because we gave up a piece of an employee that we were holding on to. And you'll still see there's still several positions that are vacant. We still have a custodial person vacant. IT had a person vacant who was just hired. So there are some money sitting in your unencumbered budget that will be encumbered once we get the people into place. So don't read too much into some of those numbers because that's just how our financial system works. On the expenditure side, we still have 6 months of operations, although it feels like we're getting towards the end because we're so already in fiscal year 20. So there are still balances that we haven't spent for supplies and services. For the day-to-day things, we don't encumber those. We actually encumber them as they're ordered. So that's why you still see some pretty significant balance remaining, but it's not that it's going to stay there. It's going to get used as time progresses. We are forecasting a negative variance, which you already see in SPED services, and that's really predominantly to some of the in-district students that we have and the services that are needed. Keep in mind that some of those services will be eligible for circuit breaker, which means even though we're going over now, we'll recoup some reimbursement in the back end. Utilities, we're still projecting a small variance primarily comprised of the net metering credits. I have not heard an update on the additional net metering credits, just so you know. When I contacted the gentleman regarding your interest, he now was just waiting for the project to be approved. But it was very helpful for him to know that we're on standby to purchase what they needed. So I'll keep you abreast on that. On health insurance, we're still, again, looking at a positive variance of about $130,000 right now. And then just keep in mind, I feel like I'm a broken record, but again, we have the planned positive variance due to the regional transportation reimbursement fund that we're using. On the capital project updates, I don't know if you've been in Linquist, but there are fresh new floors that I think are being well received by everyone. That was sort of a fun installation process to watch, and we are in the process of ordering 2 large floor mats with the DS logo on them that we're going to have at the entrance, just to really sort of pop all the colors and give it a more professional finished look. Our next thing is we're hoping over February break to do some rehabbing of the colors of the walls. Now that we've got fresh new floors, the walls are looking like we need to do something to those. So we're putting together a plan, and we're hoping over February break to do a piece of that to continue the freshening of Linquist.
Can I just interject one thing, which also coincides with something you'll see in my self-eval that I should have mentioned a long time ago in my superintendent report, which is that the Mudge Foundation is supporting us with a grant for installation of a sound system within the cafeteria. Have I mentioned that?
Did we accept a donation?
We haven't formalized it yet.
We haven't formalized it. So they've offered us the money. They're waiting for us to see exactly how much we need, right, and what it's going to be used for. But what we would like to do is make that cafeteria have better projection from what's going on in the auditorium, so that you can simulcast and see it on screens and have decent sound. We learned at the beginning of the year when we had our all faculty meeting to kick off the year, people couldn't hear us on one end of the cafeteria, and you really should be able to have events in there. People should be able to hear it, and you should be able to simulcast what's going on in the auditorium. So that's something that we're working on, and also to project better than just putting a projector on the stage or on a podium in front of the stage. We're looking into a projector, like in a projector booth.
Yeah.
So
Will we get screens for or monitors for the cafeteria?
Is
that part of what the Mudges are?
Well, that's what they supported in theory, but but we haven't actually figured out the full cost yet. Yeah. So we're still getting some more estimates on that. But they've been fantastic in terms of their support for that. So
they realized it would be helpful for town meeting too, for the time we have the overflow.
Town meeting, and some people don't feel comfortable in auditoriums. Our 8th grade graduation was a real problem last year. There just were not enough seats for people. That's not okay. It's not okay with the fire department or us.
It's interesting. I think about it from an inclusion perspective as well. I know for the drama productions, there's often a sensory-friendly performance, and for students or community members who might like to see the play but need a place to leave, but they don't want to be out of the play, being able to have a simulcast experience in an outdoor environment.
I'm really excited about that, and it dovetails nicely with what Dawn's talking about. So that space is it's really looking good. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. That's that new linoleum that's not slick. It's really it feels comfortable when you walk on it.
My son came home very excited about the new floor and the new window.
That's good.
They would care, but.
He's easily satisfied. That's excellent.
Good work.
Yeah.
And I've provided you some information on additional fiscal year 19 projects that you can read, and I just wanted to highlight that we have the large EMS upgrade project from fiscal year 18 that we've still been working on. Since we last met, we have engaged with Garcia, Kaluska, and D'Souza, who is an engineering consulting firm. We use them for the Chickering AC project, and they were phenomenal. And so it was nice to work with someone that you are familiar with. So we've had them come in, and they're doing design study right now for the EMS system. That will allow us to have a package to go out and be able to bid that project. Plus, it gives us an outside view on where we should go with that project. Because remember, this is the project that'll piggyback the other two school buildings as we build as we move to build a single platform for our EMS management. And we are currently, Andrew's got some connections and I have some names where we're hopefully looking to engage a architect firm to start doing the fiscal year 17 feasibility study that you guys approved for space for storage. And then with some of the other issues that we have going on in our buildings with space, looking to see if we can have them see how they work, and then do another one in the high school, because are we using the space as effectively and efficiently as we can, given that we've got multiple programs that we want to do in the schools now.
Right. So I've been through that before. It's really helpful for the administration and both at the building and central office level to know exactly how utilized your facility is. Mm-hmm. And they can give you really good slides that spell it out for you. And that allows systems to determine whether or not it's serious enough to need to warrant further work and study, and ultimately change if needed. So I think that's going to be really helpful.
Can I just ask quickly, as part of that, are like faculty, do they talk to faculty about the use of things or what they feel like there's need for? And if so, I would suggest, at least from the theater perspective, talk to some of the students and the seniors.
Oh, yeah, so definitely we're looking at the initial project, which is storage, both our facilities, but also the theater, and the music, that whole Glenquist area. I'm sure that's their format that they follow. They've got to understand what the user's needs are.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That was also Ralph, too, in the maintenance building. That was one of the big...
Right, that's why I said facilities and Glenquist. It's a multiple staged look at
the
storage.
back of the kitchen.
Exactly. Right. So any questions on the fiscal year 19 monthly update? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So we put 18 to bed, finally.
On to the next one.
Yeah, in 19, we're halfway through. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda was just answering questions. Again, we don't have any new budget information for you tonight because it's still very early in the process. Your February meeting is where we'll bring the next version of your budget, because at that point in time we will have the first round of the governor's budget. We'll know what the new MLC numbers are, and we will have your programming changes from the special ed audit and the reorg to roll out for you. So right now we're sort of in a standing position right now, but I can say one of the, I think, predominant questions that was asked, and I applaud the members for actually looking at everything that was in the budget book. But if you looked at Sherborn's guidance, some people were confused. So the two columns were apples to apples. So in fiscal year 19, you have our total, which included the debt. But when you went to 20, it was broken out between salaries and operating, and it didn't include the debt. So it looked like we were having a huge decrease in our available funds. But I clarified with the town of Sherborn that they were just missing that piece in that column. So when you put that piece back in, you see that our increase is the allowed 2% on salaries. So hopefully that answer got out to everyone, so you haven't been losing sleep since it was presented. And other than that, I didn't think there were any significant questions that I had from either advisory or warrant at this point in time, because it still is early in the process.
I think Jean sent you an email tonight.
Oh, tonight? Okay, well.
I didn't.
She missed the deadline.
Well, and she acknowledged that she missed the deadline.
Okay, well, we can pick back up with those when we are next together in February. One thing I do have for you tonight is, as we talked about, we wanted to go back and further look at the capital. So you do have a version 2 of the fiscal year 20 capital request for us to review. And basically everything we thought we were going to recommend is what we ended up recommending. And I left sort of the items listed initially so you can sort of see where everything went. So on the roof project, we have moved that out to fiscal year 22. That would be when that roof would potentially be eligible for MSBA funding. The new guidelines are out for anyone who's looking to put funding proposals together, and it is 20 years, but they do tell you that what happened last year once they got all the proposals in and what they actually ended up funding, the roof projects got bumped to 25 years. So it differs every year depending on the supply and demand of the funds. So that's just something we'll have to keep in mind, that it's not a the 20 is the initial threshold. There could be another threshold if there's too many proposals in that particular year.
Would we typically, if we were not going to get reimbursements, would we want to cross our fingers and push our roof out, or would we want to commit to pay for the roof?
I think we'd want to see where we are and what we could do, because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So if we're just talking about another couple years or a year or two, Ralph assured me that we could just continue. We're not in bad shape. We would just continue to do patches and such to hold on to, so that we weren't damaging our.
We're not going to get to critical mass leakage because we're putting it off, kind of thing.
No, we would not make that decision and negatively affect for reimbursement. But I think what we might be able to do, and again, this is where we'll go and spend some more time researching, is we've got multiple things that we can put together, and it could be a pretty significant project between all three roofs on the buildings here and the boilers, are all like within a bandwidth of years. And that probably does make sense to look. And you have to be ahead of everything. So this gives us a lot of time to get that planning and to meet all their protocol. Because basically, to apply, you already have to have sort of the town meeting. You have to have so many pieces of the puzzle already in place to even make it into the proposal process. So
if you're thinking about it now, it's possible we can be there for that date and then fall back.
Right.
Thank you.
The MSBA website is excellent, by the way. It's not a bad thing to look at just to refresh your memory.
Right, and you can see you can see what towns have applied, what towns they accepted, and some of the parameters. So they are very. There's a lot of information there that you can obtain.
Can I just ask if we applied and didn't get it, would pushing things out, because part of why it's spread out so far is so that we would spread out the cost. If we push it all together and then have pushed the life expectancy.
But sometimes it's also better to push it together and we just go out and
then our plan.
Either they bond or we bond. It's just the piecemeal. I think that's harder sometimes for the towns to pull together. But we will work with them. So we haven't made any huge decisions other than we're not going to be asking for the huge amount for the high school roof next year, because I think it's premature to jump in there without exploring other options.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's
and so
terrific.
with that, the skylights in the high school library would then be pushed out also. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. There's no leaking, so we wouldn't touch those knowing that we might be doing the roof. So we did push those out. So those are the two pieces that we had initially had in year 2020 that we've pushed. So with that, and all the other items that we've already discussed, we're looking just a little under 300,000. Again, this is version 2. It would be, I'm asking for a school committee to approve it this evening so that we have initial numbers to present, because the towns both capital committees are sort of waiting to see what we're going to do. What I'm asking you to do is approve it knowing, and all, but not the exact number that we'd be using, but remember the plan was to use sort of the transportation money that we put aside to fund this. So, and that's it's 230,000. So we might be a little bit more, but then we could just reach more into a little bit further into E&D, and basically the region would self-fund fiscal year 20's capital projects.
We would not have capital requests on the town meeting budgets.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
We would communicate this is what we're looking at doing, but not making a request.
Right. So I'm not asking you to commit the number. I'm not asking you to actually commit the funds tonight because we don't really know the exact number, but to commit that we will fund our own capital for fiscal year 20, knowing that that was sort of the plan.
Do we need to make a motion?
I was going to say, so, well, you need to make a motion to, I think, I wanted to accept the version 2 of the capital 5-year plan, because the 5-year plan is actually what I have to send to the towns too, because they're doing their forecasting for the out years.
So can I ask a clarifying question then?
Mm-hmm.
In the section where it says boilers are in 2023, you're saying that if we are able to go for like building and get reimbursed, sorry, I can't my acronym, that maybe we would be pulling that into 2022 to create a larger package?
We probably would go a little further out.
Or pushing the whole thing to 2023?
Yes, 23 or 24. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So these are just forecasts for the out years. The only one that we're really committing to what we're going to do is in the first column.
Right.
So then I'm not quite sure then, we're not voting on a number, we're voting on the concept, because it's...
This is constantly the capital. Now what we're going to go do is we're going to go get 3 estimates for everything so that we have very solid numbers for you. So you're approving this version of capital as it is now. It's what I usually have. But nothing is final until we come to March.
Right.
And that's where I would give you a final number to vote, and we would vote to use E&D to fund it for an exact.
So we vote to use this document and share it with the capital committees of both towns to begin the discussion.
Right.
For 2020 capital plans specifically.
So you're approving this submission to move on to the town committees.
So do you want a motion?
So can I hear a motion?
Yes.
Please.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 20 capital plan version 2 for use with the towns. I guess. What do you want to?
No, I think you can just approve version 2. Right.
Version 2,
Yeah.
that's all.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, John.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Okay, good. Thank you,
The
Dawn.
notes are great, by the way. This is terrific.
Yes.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's it helps us too, because this is actually a good working document that Ralph and I use. So it's not just for you guys; it actually is a good working document for us.
And I want to just also take a minute to say thank you for all the explanatory notes and all the documents that you give us, because in preparing for this meeting and wanting to have questions, I would have a question and then I would read and then you answer my question. So I really appreciate the thoroughness of the notes because it helps.
Our goal to be efficient.
Yes.
And having been on your side before, I'm constantly asking myself, what will school committee ask? And I try to answer it before you ask.
Thank you. I just don't want you to think we're not paying attention.
No,
she knows.
The fact that we're not asking questions means we're paying
So the
attention.
other piece, and Anne did bring this to my attention, and I failed to do what she asked me to do. So knowing that the capital that you have here is really in the ballpark of what we set aside to help fund the bigger capital project, we're coming now and asking you for additional money. So consider that the regional transportation fund is taking care of this ask that I've already put aside. Now we have an additional ask because as we've been discussing in several executive sessions, we have some security enhancements that we would like to quickly move forward with. And so we don't have time to go through the whole capital ask process with the town. So one opportunity the region has, because you are a region, is you have your excess and deficiency. So we are bringing forward a request tonight to approve up to $145,000 for us to immediately go start 3 security enhancement projects that were identified by the outside auditors that we worked with multiple vendors on and getting quotes and understanding exactly what we want to do. We've now made the decision of what needs to be done and we want to move forward. So the $145,000 includes a contingency. So that's why I'm saying up to $145,000. I'm hoping we won't spend up to that. And it's really the biggest project is the intercom system and the access control for the campus. So that's around $95,000 of the 145.
Is that change going to meet the request in the part of NEASC that you change the way that you lock your buildings?
So NEASC won't specifically tell us what you must do. They just want us to be cognizant and to address it in a way that the community and the school system sees fit.
Do you feel that the proposal being put forward is going to meet those needs?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we included administration, and then Mr. Rattacco and myself did multiple walkthroughs with the vendors, because a lot of this is technology. The doors will be on the bell schedule, 2 bell schedules, right?
That's a really key piece. Yeah. So that means that during the passing periods, there's no locking of the typical doors. But when the passing period closes, or shortly thereafter, we have the ability to set that timeline. You might have a minute or two because of stragglers, but shortly thereafter, then it locks and you have to go to the main entrance and buzz in.
And though I can imagine that having a more sophisticated system increases the cost, the alternative would be paying a person to go around and lock all the doors every time there's a period, correct? I mean, like if we didn't want to do this, but we need to achieve the thing, then we have to then hire a human being to go. So even though it's an expensive system, I feel like it's being offset by the not need to depend on a human being to be locking and unlocking the doors all day long.
Right.
Well, it also allows the students, because what would probably happen is then is there'd only be one set of doors for the high school and one set of doors for the middle school that you could have open, and it would restrict access. So this allows the students actually to have their schedule disrupted less.
Traffic flow stays the same in this area.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there is a motion in your packet for this request. And again, just to make you feel financially sound of what you're doing, keep in mind it's E&D, but I've also mentioned to you outside of what we're paying for capital that we are anticipating some positive surpluses from the current operating budget.
And we're at 4.7%.
And we're about 4.5 right now. And we did build the budget with a little bit of E&D for fiscal year 20, but that's basically your anticipated revenue surplus. So I'm making sure that we're putting all the puzzles together, and you're not going to end up wake up and have no money. It's very strategic on how we're sort of utilizing the monies.
And we need to fund safety and security issues.
Absolutely.
And we're not asking the towns to do that.
Right. We'd like to get this done. It's been a long time coming. We get a lot of questions about it.
So I'd like to make a motion then. If I could make a motion to approve a transfer of up to $145,000 from certified excess and deficiency to fund the recommended security enhancements for our campus facilities. Such funds will be accounted for in the region's capital project fund.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
And just to clarify, so it'll run through your capital fund, not your operating. So that's keep it separate.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. The ACID recommendation for FY20. Is that you?
Yes. So you remember which meeting was it? October or November?
This was it was moved from the December meeting.
Thank you. What you have before you are the requests from the ACED committee, which met on 2 occasions to review a number of different requests. You can see those on the attached page. The recommendations are all on that first page, and there were some healthy discussions of this, and there was recognition that that the Appendix C committee that met last year discussed some of these items. So there's recognition that this is not a slam dunk. Would you agree with that, John? That was, but this was a unanimous decision of the ACED to put these forward.
And
Was there-
do we discuss now? Do we discuss when we have final numbers on the budget? How does,
So
what's
I
our
think
plan?
the plan is that we would discuss now, but it gets voted on with the budget.
Would be part of, it would be built, whatever.
Whatever we
But it's a separate vote.
It's a separate vote, but vote on
At the same time we finalize
because
the
it
budget.
then becomes
Okay.
part of the budget. But we need to have the discussion ahead of time because, I mean, it adds, what, $11,000 to the ACID budget if everything was accepted. So that
And-
would be,
So,
right?
I think it only adds 7,500. It's 5 ratios, right? 5 ratio
It's
points.
just 5 ratios, right? So
No.
cooling is way off.
3.5.
I took all the,
It's 5 ratio points.
it's just 5, okay,
Yes.
And,
so it's less than that.
but that's if there's only one person for each of those positions. If there's more than one person for any of those positions,
Yeah,
Then
it's
it's
more multiple people. Would they split? If it's multiple
They
people, they
split.
they
split it.
split. So that's
So,
the amount.
For example, the senior project, the recommendation, the current ratio is 2.5. The recommendation is for 4.0. That's still 2 people, so that would be 2.0, 2.0 essentially.
But what we brought forward was actually 3.0. I believe.
3.0, I'm sorry, right. They recommended 4, we recommended 3.0, so it would be 1.5 per person.
So, but I have questions, because the furthest right column is FY20, and if you add up all of those amounts,
Yeah, that's the one's not right though. The senior project is in there as a change of 3. It's really only a change of 0.5.
right?
It's getting changed to a 3, but you're not adding 3.
You're just adding.
Starting
three.
at
oh,
budget.
oh, so it was,
Yeah.
all right.
That number's wrong.
All right.
So that, yes, that
That's
is wrong. So
the
that,
number.
So your number, you're adding $7,556.65.
significant difference than what I was thinking, but still, something to consider. Are there any comments or thoughts? People want to ask questions? Yes?
You ready for me to start?
Please start.
Okay, assistant sailing coach has been considered before and not approved. Other teams have paid through parent volunteers. The reason, my understanding, is because we've moved to Sharon and we have more kids. There may be other ways to fund this other than the budget, like other teams do. And senior project was 2.5 in the most recent review, and I don't know if the workload has changed.
So we actually discussed that, and it was up considerably last year.
Right.
And we didn't know that at the time when we were doing the Appendix C. So it's actually a positive trend from my point of view. I think senior projects are a really valuable experience. I saw some of the presentations and was impressed. So that was the feeling of the ACED when we looked at that. But you're right, that was discussed. That was one of the ones on the Appendix C.
And one of the things that we also discussed in the MOU was that it needed to not be a 1 year or even a 2 year, it needed to be a 3 year or longer trend of increase, because it goes up into the number of students doing senior project might be up last year, but it might be down this year. So it's got to be an upward trend over
This is a
several years.
Permanent ratio change.
Right.
Right, because it gets, once it
Did
gets
we
voted in,
did we
so-
discuss it from that angle, or did we discuss
What we
if
discussed
some things
was in
exist?
executive sessions.
Okay. That is true.
There are considerations.
hmm So
Such as, is it, so for instance, Community Service Club and Global Citizenship Certification Program are new programs. And so we would want to hear, how long have they been in existence? The same with senior project, right? So
Right,
what is
community
enrollment
service
like?
has gone through the process. They are now in their 5th year.
Yeah.
And so they have been consistently going through without any money. And Global Citizenship is also finishing its 3rd year. And it also ties in with our strategic plan of creating global citizens. So that's why we felt very strongly that we needed to have that program continue.
Same with the senior project.
Right. The other piece with the sailing, the other feedback is the parents from the sailing program have been adamant about asking for this because they also feel as though they have donated thousands of dollars in the purchase of boats. I'm not saying I agree or
Right,
disagree, but
no, I
that's,
know, John, and
that's-
I'm smiling because we'll also hear football and hockey, 501(c), and all kinds of others have done the same thing.
It's a problem that all districts deal with when they accept donations. This is why you have a process of accepting donations, because you're acknowledging that people are going to feel a certain amount of ownership for decision making down the road. That's constantly a challenge. And I think you're correct to not, be swayed too dramatically one way or the other on that, because you have to think about the big picture.
Right, and the donations are tremendous, and without it, we may not have that sailing program, and it was parents 10 years ago that really pushed to start that program.
And it's benefiting a good number of kids.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
But does that mean we pay for that assistant coach as opposed to other assistant coaches? That's the question, I guess.
And I think as we get closer in the budget process, you'll have a better sense of.
I mean
it's, I know it's not. It's I know.
So
but
I think it's more. It comes down to more of the need versus what or the desire.
Do
Well,
we
in
vote
the
on
long
I
this?
think it's
term,
equity
yeah.
too.
Do we have to vote on this tonight?
No.
Okay. Is it possible for us to forward, because I do have some follow-up specific questions based on, I read the things that you gave and the obviously the programs you didn't fund. Is it possible to send questions that can be answered, like if we have specific data? Like I would like to know how many people are in the sailing program and how many people are in it. Like I would like some very hard data on these things before I offer my opinion about what we should do. Would that be a reasonable ask?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
If you send those to Anne or it's fine if they come to me directly. We'll get answers.
Send them to me so that if multiple people are asking the same thing,
Yes, good idea.
then we can put
Excellent.
it together.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we will revisit this. We'll actually revisit it next month because we're doing a bigger
Yes.
dive into the budget again.
Right. So
Second
you'll
extra
see
stuff.
you'll have another snapshot of where you stand
Okay.
financially and what the gap may be, and that may shed some more light on what you decide to do.
So would you like that parsed out as a separate item on the agenda?
Let's see what the questions reveal.
Okay.
People feel after they've had their questions answered. Okay.
Yep.
Is that okay?
I think we'll need to discuss it because I don't
I think
think that any decision, yes, no, maybe, was considered tonight, so.
So separate item.
okay. Yep. All right. So it's a separate item.
Because it is a separate vote.
It is a separate vote, but we're not voting.
Yeah. But I'm just saying it's
So-
not. You won't incorporate it by us adding it to the budget and voting the budget. It is a separate
Right.
vote for
Yeah.
the ratios.
Okay. All right. So we'll move that ahead. We'll get some more information. Thank you. All right. Read of the town report. First, thank you to Claire for all the time that she spent writing that. Many members should
And
have
Dawn
gotten
for her assistance.
Change the number.
the draft. And if you can please get questions and comments to Claire by tomorrow morning. All right. So, tonight after this.
I think I've heard from a couple of people, so we're good.
Okay, good. And then when the final report's accepted, then it becomes a public document.
Right.
Okay, so it's
It
just a
hasn't
draft.
been
That's why.
presented. That's a mistake that it's distributed at the meeting. On the,
On It is not at the meeting. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. We've got approval for the minutes, donations, and high school field trip. In the past, people have asked to do look at the donations separately. Is that correct? Not to vote on them separately, but to read them as part of the motion. Do people care about that this time? Are we good?
I personally like
Okay.
it just because
Okay.
I think
So
it's nice to
somebody
verbally
please
thank people.
make a motion and include the donations. Maggie, do you want to do that?
Yes.
So-
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda, including the minutes of our last meeting. And I would like to specifically call out the donations that were received by the Dover-Sherborn Public Schools, the last regional schools. A $14,000 donation from SPAN DS to be used for wellness initiatives. A donation from Needham Bank to the benefit of the METCO program. A generous donation from Mudge Foundation of $10,000 to fund the performance of Mr. Joy, and a donation from Leaders in the amount of $150. We're very appreciative of all these donations.
Do I hear a second? Discussion?
And I'd also like to thank the teachers at the high school, Miss Lottie, Mr. Estabrook, and whoever is going to the Galapagos with the students, because that is a great opportunity.
Great fit.
If I may just add, CNN just had a recent story. They just released a number of species of iguana that had not been on one of the islands for 30 to 40 years. And so Miss Lottie, upon approval, is looking to craft it so that part of their research entails that, and will actually end up being, one of the first groups to be able to do some data tracking on those 4-foot iguanas.
So
That's very cool. That's amazing.
That is.
Fabulous.
Great experience.
All right, so all in favor? This is for the
Aye.
consent agenda.
Aye.
Right, very good, thank you. We've got communications, everyone can look at that. If you have any questions, please let us know. And does anybody have any items for the next meeting? Notice it's a Thursday, not a Tuesday, it's a Thursday.
That is because of Phonathon.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yeah. All right, so if people have things they'd like to add to the agenda, please let me know by email. And we need to adjourn open session to go into executive session, not to return to open session.
To discuss
To this purpose of discussing collective bargaining.
Aye.
To go
Aye.
through. All right, yep. All right, thank you.
Very good, thanks.